Warning, this video may contain spoilers for late parts in the game. If you plan on playing this at some point, turn back now. You have been warned. Welcome everyone to some crazy alternate universe Harry Potter shenanigans. If you don't know, there are multiple versions of this game, one for PS2, Xbox, and GameCube, an RPG for Game Boy, a PC version, and the one we'll be talking about today, which everyone might know for the horrifying NPCs, the Ps1 version. Now, I've played the one for PS2, and I do have to say, after playing this one, I think fonder of the other, but I do think this game still holds up fairly well if you know a couple things beforehand. But if you aren't going for 100%, you'll have a perfectly fine time playing the game over a weekend or something. Let's get to the basics. Before I get to what I mentioned a little bit before, I want to talk about the gameplay a bit. Generally, this game is a puzzle platformer, but it deviates slightly every so often with the minigames that aren't optional. You'll be jumping around as Harry Potter from bookshelves and floating platforms while using your magic variously all through the X button. For some spells, you'll enter a timed portion where you have to tap the buttons in order. Though I was fairly bad at it, you have infinite chances in order to pull this off, so if you mess up, it isn't a big deal, but it is pretty annoying, especially with the Incendio spell, which some enemies force you to fight some stuff if you mess up. There's a kind of life bar in this game called the stamina gauge that can be refilled by finding any of the many chocolate frogs around the castle, as well as potion vials that you can find more sparingly throughout that offer you a full heal instead of partially like the chocolate frogs. Since the X button is being used, the interaction button is square. This is useful to note due to the bookcases that are located more in the walls than the rest, with pressing square next to them letting you into a secret passage where you usually play some sort of minigame in order to obtain a famous Witches and Wizards card, which are one of the collectibles in the game, though these minigames are optional. Other collectibles are the Birdie Bots Every Flavor Beans, of which there are 4 sets that are usually located around the same area as each other. You turn these into the Weasley brothers, who give you a secret password to one of the 4 portrait rooms located in Hogwarts, netting you something useful that mostly pertains to the Quidditch sections, but let me explain what I mentioned at the beginning. There are missables in the game, including both the beans and the wizard cards, the scale of which I'm not totally sure, but the Gringotts section has these gems that they don't fully explain, and you need to get a certain amount in order to get a wizard card. For the beans, there are just a finite amount. For the last 2 types of beans, there's a couple extra, and some segments that you can't get back to. You can also miss some house points, but I don't think it matters too much due to the end of the game anyway. Also, you're about to see me play Quidditch pretty horribly. I've never been too good at games that have you precisely get the ring, so bear with it. Nevertheless, I'm not too sure on this portion because I basically just went through a bunch of rings until a catch segment takes over the screen where you need to press a button at the correct time in order to catch the snitch. And even though I was pretty horrible at it, I never lost, so I'm not sure if the other secret even can catch the snitch. Also, you get pelted by quaffles every so often, but I was still able to dodge them fairly well. I almost forgot to mention that in order to get the spells, you have to take a class in order to learn them, though they're all learned through the story, so you won't be missing any. In order to learn them, you have to do a short minigame, kind of like Guitar Hero, sort of, where you press the face buttons with specific timing a varying amount of times. Do I really need to tell this story? Well, kind of. I take this as some alternate universe shenanigans due to child exploitation from Hagrid and just the different things they did in order to make the story a playable video game, taking the likenesses of the movie while staying slightly closer to the books, though very loosely. The game virtually starts the same, explaining how Harry came to Privet Drive, how he was abused by his uncle and aunt, Hagrid taking him to Diagon Alley, and essentially skips all the way to him being at Hogwarts. Dumbledore welcomes Harry, personally telling him that the 3rd floor corridor is off limits. Harry meets up with Ron, who tells him that Malfoy ran off with Harry's owl Hedwig, so Harry tracks him down and retrieves her. After, they go to the courtyard and get some Quidditch training in from Madame Hooch. They go to Charms class and learn Wingardium Leviosa and immediately get into a fight of wizard crackers with Malfoy. The next day he learns Incendio from Professor Sprout and does some more Quidditch training. He gets invited over to Hagrid's hut where he tasks him with finding some fire seeds so that his dragon egg will hatch, making Harry an accomplice to his illegal dragon having. Neville then informs Harry that Malfoy stole his Remembrall, forcing Harry to attack Malfoy on a broom in order to get it back. Harry is then caught by McGonagall, who instantly forces Harry to play Quidditch for Gryffindor as their seeker. Harry wins the game by catching the snitch. The next day, Harry learns how to mix potions from Snape, and then Quirrell teaches him how to use a new spell, Verdimillious. McGonagall also teaches Harry how to use the transformation spell Avifors. He's then forced to race Ps1 in order to get a parcel back that turns out to be his father's invisibility cloak that actually works as a power-up and isn't permanent, weirdly. He accidentally enters the Forbidden Corridor and is told to leave by Filch, but Harry doesn't like authority, so he makes his way through it instead, eventually coming upon the Mirror of Erised, where he sees his parents before getting interrupted by Dumbledore, who tells him that it is a mirror that shows the heart's pure desire, and that it would be moved. He meets up with Ron and a giant troll being forced to run down a giant corridor before reaching the female lavatories and finding Hermione, with Harry fighting off what the troll throws and Ron using Wingardium Leviosa on the troll's club in order to bonk him on the head. Immediately after, Harry goes to the next Quidditch game, winning again before Hagrid gets his child labor on due to his dragon being sick, making Harry go to Gringotts and play minigames in order to take out his own money to buy ingredients for a tonic that will heal Norbert. The three then try to convince Hagrid to let Norbert go, eventually agreeing and having Harry carry Norbert to the tallest tower, where Ron's brother Charlie picks him up. Like the book, this gets Harry detention with Hagrid in the Forbidden Forest, looking for a wounded unicorn, eventually coming in contact with a shadowy figure and getting saved by Firenze. Hagrid then gives him a flute that he carved, accidentally letting it slip that this would put Fluffy to sleep. The three then go into the Forbidden Corridor and put Fluffy to sleep, sneaking under his feet and finding the Devil's Snare underneath. Beating it leads to Harry racing on a broomstick to find the right key, which he does, leading to Harry playing a much different version of Wizard Chess, where the goal is to kill all the pieces. This leads to another troll segment where Harry has to Wingardium Leviosa things out of the way while the troll sleepwalks into a hole. Into the final segment with the black fire from the book. Harry goes through and finds the robed man again, who animates some suits of armor which Harry defeats, revealing that the man is actually Quirrell, who runs into the next room, Harry following close behind. Harry enters the room and sees the Mirror of Erised and sees himself with the Sorcerer's Stone, with Quirrell appearing off to the side and seemingly talking to himself before taking off his headwear and revealing Voldemort on the back of his head, who yells at Harry to give him the stone. They get into a big fight, with Quirrell eventually just grabbing onto Harry and starting a weird little struggle where Harry comes out the victor, though not long after, passing out. When Harry wakes up, Dumbledore is at his side, telling him that the stone was destroyed before making it to the end of the year feast. Dumbledore announces that so far Slytherins are the winners of the House Cup, but at the last second awards Harry 60 points for being the chosen one, and Gryffindor wins. While I don't think this is the best version of Sorcerer's Stone, it's a pretty solid one, with only a couple of things that I disliked. I enjoyed the platforming fairly well, although I haven't played many PS1 platformers. I think this game does do a great job for these portions. I also think the little Guitar Hero bits you do in order to learn spells is interesting, and I actually happen to think the horrifying PS1 models of the characters brings a nice charm to the game. This game made some weird choices to justify some segments of the story that they had to change for, I guess, pacing. Nothing too crazy, but the fact that Hagrid forces Harry to buy medicine for his dragon is definitely strange. With that said, I really dislike the Gringotts section because it's so precise, leaving very little room for error, which I've found is a running theme in my dislike for segments like this in other games. This is mostly due to it being a necessary thing to get past in order to advance the game, but also for them not explaining what the gems do and making some of the wizard cards missable. Like I said, mostly you'll be having a fun little romp through the world of Harry Potter, but this is definitely not the best version of the game to experience it through for me, and I'd highly recommend the PS2, GameCube, or Xbox version. That's not to say that this game isn't worth it if you want a little more Harry Potter content, but overall, the Game Boy version might scratch that itch due to it being an entirely different genre of game than the others. Hope you enjoyed, and see you next video.